WrestleMania 22 was definitely the end of an era. The end of the arena era of WrestleMania, if you will. Because as of press time, no other WrestleMania since then has been held inside the confines of an arena. That arena in question, the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois, formerly known as the Rosemont Horizon, a building which famously hosted a portion of WrestleMania 2 as well as WrestleMania 13, and of course this show here, WrestleMania 22. As of press time, WrestleMania has not made its way back to the Windy City. Of course, the show was a hot ticket as always, selling out within a matter of minutes, as well as boasting a $2.5 million gate. All in all, we can say that this WrestleMania is alright, and of course, we'll get into all of that. The show centered around two big title matches because, of course, WWE was still locked in a brand split at this time, and these days, of course, the brand splitting was, I think, kept to a lot better than it is nowadays. Either way, on one side we had John Cena versus Triple H for the WWE Championship, and then on the other side we had the World Heavyweight Championship match between Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, and Rey Mysterio. After WrestleMania 21, there was a draft lottery that took place that sent both champions to opposite shows. So we saw Cena move over to Raw, and vice versa. We saw Batista move over to SmackDown, and in hindsight, it was really inevitable that we would end up at this point at sometime with Triple H pretty much being the head honcho and the staple of that Raw brand in the years leading up to this. Triple H having been the main heel on the brand for quite a while at that point, he was kind of in a weird position because he was just around, and I remember there being just kind of a general feeling of a little bit of the hatred that had gone on against him had kind of died down around this time, and I suppose that they kind of figured out that that's kind of where they were going with the match. It was kind of not necessarily a very heated build-up to this match. Triple H fails to win the Rumble, and then from there he goes through a tournament. In the tournament final, he beats Rob Van Dam and Big Show in a triple threat match. Don't ask me how they ended up with a triple threat match at the end of the tournament, but there we were. Triple H wins it convincingly, and there you go. Pretty simple really, but basically they weren't making this into any kind of a blood feud and wanted to play it off as just kind of two big superstars colliding type of a match. On the SmackDown side, we had another pretty simple build-up, but it's definitely noteworthy because it involved Rey Mysterio's 2006 Royal Rumble victory in honor of Eddie Guerrero, of course, who had just passed months prior and who he had worked with at the previous WrestleMania and so forth. So it was clear when Mysterio won the Rumble that this was going to be a redemption story for him. Of course, the last guy he eliminated in said Royal Rumble was Randy Orton. This didn't sit well with Orton. At the subsequent pay-per-view No Way Out, Orton wins the rights to the WrestleMania World Championship match from Rey Mysterio. However, days later, it was deemed by Teddy Long to be under controversial circumstances. Therefore, the title match was going to be a triple threat playa. It seems like the majority of the storyline writing was focused on the feud between Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. They actually started this on the day after Christmas in 2005 with a confrontation between McMahon and HBK, and out of nowhere he just says some stuff to him like, "Oh, I could screw you like I screwed Bret Hart, pal." McMahon then starts messing with Michaels on a weekly basis, further messing with him at the Royal Rumble by distracting him while Shane McMahon dumped him out of the match. They then made Shawn forcibly join Vince McMahon's Kiss My Ass Club. They even ran an angle where Vince forces Shawn to take a public drug test, and it all ends up with Shawn throwing urine all over Vince and Shane McMahon. Quite a good time. They recreated the Montreal Screwjob finish in a match with Shane and Shawn Michaels. So yeah, good old Vince McMahon shenanigans here with all this build up to their match. We're also going to get the second installment of the Money in the Bank match here, as well as an Undertaker match. Oh, and who can forget the Mickie James Trish Stratus Women's Championship Championship match. Noteworthy because, well, it's where the lesbian angle came up between the two of them, and something that was controversial at the time, and something that they really haven't done anything like since. For what it's worth, just making that statement. Let's get into the show itself. It opens up with a battle royal during the pre-show, which is won by Viscera. Big Vis, if you will, daddy. We open up the show with the Tag Team Championship match, Big Show and Kane against Carlito and Chris Masters. Seems like not too much thought went into this whole thing either. The tag team scene at this point was pretty much an afterthought where they just kind of threw guys together. At least Big Show and Kane kind of made sense because they were two big guys. Carlito and Chris Masters probably weren't happy with losing in the opening match, but at least it wasn't a spot in the pre-show battle royal. We then go to the Money in the Bank ladder match, which, as you can see, was going to become an annual thing at WrestleMania since it was so successful the year prior. In this one, we had Rob Van Dam, Shelton Benjamin, Ric Flair, Finlay, Bobby Lashley, Matt Hardy. Shelton was in there to do Shelton stuff. Rob Van Dam makes it into the match after having to bow out of the match the year prior. Lashley was in there to do the big guy stuff. You have Matt Hardy, who of course was a ladder match veteran, so his input on things probably really helped the situation, I'm sure. Ric Flair seemed kind of just thrown in there, but he ended up doing some pretty crazy stuff for a guy his age, and that was also noteworthy. Don't know if it quite topped the first one at this point, but RVD wins the match in the briefcase, and that all ends rather dubiously, but of course that's another story. This point is when they started having the Hall of Famers come out to do a curtain call during the WrestleMania show itself. This was quite the class that included Mean Gene, Sensational Sherry, Tony Atlas, Vern Gagne, Bridge, Blackjacks. The Guerrero family was there to accept for Eddie. Of course, the class was headlined by Bret Hart, famously. Even though he accepted the induction and appeared at the Hall of Fame ceremony, it was still kind of a touchy subject for Bret Hart at this time to just be around WWE stuff after how everything went down with the Montreal Screwjob. So they announced him, but he doesn't end up taking his curtain call in front of the WrestleMania crowd for his Hall of Fame induction. Spoiler alert, years later, he would get to spend plenty of time in and around a WWE ring, some for the good, some for the worse. Then we got a United States Championship match between JBL and Chris Benoit. JBL was still considered one of the top heels in the company at that time, even though Benoit had gloriously won the championship just 2 WrestleManias prior to this. Here he is in a mid-card, mid-title match with JBL and coming out on the losing end. JBL had to cheat to win. Of course, it was nothing too monumental. Things would really pick up though with the next match, which is a hardcore match between Edge and Mick Foley. I neglected to really talk about the build-up to this match too much, but yes, they did quite a bit of cool stuff between Edge and Foley here. Of course, it's not going to really require too much effort from WWE Creative's part because Mick Foley famously kind of able to create his own storylines and promos and that sort of a thing. And if you know Foley, you pretty much get the idea of how this was all put together. They did way more here than they should have. We got barbed wire bats, barbed wire socks, and oh yeah, flaming tables. First time ever at a WrestleMania for a flaming table, and I'm not really sure if we've seen it since this one. Oh yeah, Edge ended up winning, but just this whole thing was absolutely insane. Definitely worth seeking out if you've never watched this WrestleMania for this match. Next up, we got what many would call a complete abomination with Booker T and Sharmell facing off against the Boogeyman. You see, Sharmell was creeped out by the Boogeyman, and therefore Booker T was trying to get her through that and defeat the Boogeyman. Makes sense. The Boogeyman actually goes over here, which is just crazy. I'm just speechless, man. They really screwed with Booker T. Then we got the Trish Stratus, Mickie James Women's Championship match. Strange match, a strange time for women's wrestling. If you don't believe how far it's come, just go back and look at this match. Mickie James wins here. I don't know, just weird. We got Undertaker and Mark Henry in a casket match. Mark Henry was kind of being pushed at the time, but I really don't think anyone bought that he was going to be the guy that ended Undertaker's famous streak. Pretty simple, kind of reads as a lifetime favor to Mark Henry from whoever, not really sure about that. But hey, he got that on the resume, which is good for him, and Undertaker goes to 14-0. Then after all that, we get a no-holds-barred match between Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon, which is the only possible way it could end with all that build-up. This was another car crash match, but in a different sort of way, and somehow was able to set itself apart from the hardcore match that Edge and Mick Foley had earlier in the night. I had my doubts, but it ended up very, very violent. Shawn Michaels, of course, gets the big win. We then went to the World Heavyweight Championship match with Kurt Angle coming in as the champion in a triple threat against Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton. New metal act POD performed Rey Mysterio out to the ring. Pretty good match, all things considering. The most important part being is that we achieved the pinnacle of the Rey Mysterio storyline by having him win the World Heavyweight Championship. Another performance dedicated to the memory of Eddie Guerrero and celebrated with Chavo and Vicky Guerrero after the match. We were next forced to endure what was billed as the Playboy Pillow Fight. This was between Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle. Another pretty simple little build up here where it's just a couple girls thrown together saying, hey, I'm the best Playboy WWE girl. No, I am. Yeah. Quick little bathroom break for everyone with Tori Wilson rolling up Candice for the win. Main event time, we get Triple H and John Cena for the WWE Championship. Both guys get huge entrances for the match, including Triple H's Conan the Barbarian-esque King-type character. This was also the debut of the Bow Down to the King entrance music variation by Motorhead. Cena also got a special entrance, which was a mob-style type entrance, and famously features a cameo from one CM Punk as one of the random gangsters. And it was very right down the middle, one-on-one, pretty much the very end. They told one of these back and forth stories, and the match is regarded as not completely amazing, but not altogether terrible either. Personally, as a fan, I remember feeling like a rock in a hard place in this one. The way I saw it, and of course these are just my thought, of course we weren't really clamoring for Triple H to win another world championship, and on the other side of that coin, some of us were still not really on board with the C-Nation wagon yet. I mean, this was a whole year in. So in a way it kind of worked because there was a subsection of fans that just wanted Cena to lose, didn't matter who he would have lost to. But then you gotta think you also have another subsection of fans that were very, very anti-Triple H and were happy to just see anybody beat him. An odd dynamic for the newer fans out there. I would kind of compare it to the first couple of Roman Reigns main event WrestleManias, where it felt forced but fine. In the end, it was pretty much a toss-up who would win, and the crowd was split pretty much 50-50. Here though, Cena wins by making Triple H tap out to the STF, keeping the WWE Championship, or at least what used to be a rare instance of the title not changing hands in the main event. In closing, I think that WrestleMania 22 was dang good, and that seems to be the consensus among a lot of fans, is that it is a pretty dang good WrestleMania. It really combined the excitement of the new age of WrestleMania with the old school feel of WrestleMania when it was still in the arenas. The stadiums are amazing, but it's been said time and time again that when it comes to sound of the crowd, maybe, just maybe, the stadiums aren't exactly what they're hyped up to be, which creates a whole nother conversation that would be had for years to come, basically comparing the stadium WrestleManias to the Raw the night after, which would usually be held in an arena. Definitely worth going back and watching though, in my opinion. I want to know what you think. Please sound off down in the comment. Do you like WrestleMania more as it is nowadays in the stadiums, or do you wish they would go back to an arena? Not that they'd ever do that, just saying hypothetically. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. On the way out, please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined. We can see you next time right here on Pro Wrestling Planet.